Okay, we're graphing supply and demand, and more specifically, shifting supply and demand lines. For each scenario, there's only going to be one of the lines shifting, either the supply or the demand line. So before we get started and start reading the scenarios, we simply need to label supply line 1 and label the demand line 1, and just get these drawn in right in the middle like I did. And then I'm going to put a dotted line that represents the equilibrium price, and I'm going to call that E1. And let's see, I should write that out for this first one. In the future I won't. Okay, so I am going to pause the video and then just finish putting this on every single graph, and that's our starting point for each one. Alright, let's get started with letter A. And just a quick reminder, all of these scenarios have to do with the market for paint. So we want to keep that in mind as we read the scenario. So A says, there have recently been some important cost-saving inventions in the technology for making paint. So the first thing we have to do for each of these scenarios is figure out, are we talking about supply or are we talking about demand? And in this case, since we're talking about the technology for making paint, there's the key, then we know we're talking about the suppliers, the people who supply the paint and make the paint. So in this case, we're dealing with the S is going to be shifting. Now we have to decide, is it going to be shifting left or right? And in this case, if it's cost-saving inventions, that means they can produce the paint. The producers can produce it for less cost. Therefore, they're competing with one another, and they will lower their price. So, which way would I shift the S in order for the price to go down? Well, I shouldn't say they lower the price. That's the end result of the shifting of the supply curve. So the shifting of the supply curve happens because now more paint can be produced for less cost. So, which way would it shift if the quantity is going up? So if it's going this direction, that means yes, the supply 2 is going to be to the right, so it's shifting to the right, which means the new equilibrium price is now right here, and it makes sense because the price goes down since they're able to produce the product more efficiently at lower cost. All right, let's look at B. B says the paint is lasting longer so that property owners need not repaint as often. So are we talking about the people who supply the paint, the producers, or are we talking about the consumers who demand and buy the paint? In this case, it's the consumers, so that would be demand. So paint is lasting longer, property owners need not repaint as often. All right, we're talking about demand. Which way does it shift? Are they demanding more quantity or less quantity? And in this case, it's less quantity, so therefore the demand line shifts this way. And here's the way to prove it. Each time you just say to yourself logically, you just read through this and you say, do you expect the price to increase or decrease? And if in this case, my E1 to my E2, the price went down, same thing over here, I forgot to label that one, but then you know that you graphed it correctly, you shifted it correctly, because logic would say, if it's lasting longer and there's less demand for paint, there would be an oversupply on the shelves at the store, and so they have to lower their price in order to get rid of that stock on the shelves. Alright, so far so good. Let's go to the next one, C. C says, because of a severe hailstorm, many people need to repaint now. Just the opposite of B. So there's more demand for the paint because people are repainting more. So we're going to shift it to the right. And because the demand is higher, what happens to the price? The price goes up in this case. Okay, we're looking at D, the hailstorms damaged several factories that make paint, forcing them to close down for several months. Right. Here they're talking about factories that make the paint. So yes, you're right. It is the supplier. So in this case, which way do we shift the supply? Is the quantity increasing or decreasing? And because the factory was damaged, the quantity decreases, so therefore we're shifting it to the left. S1 to S2 means that our equilibrium price has gone up. Alright, E, let's go up here and read E. A new trend becomes popular. Excuse me, sorry, I had to look at the screen here. A new trend becomes popular where people change the color of their bedroom walls every year. Alright, who is it? Is it the supplier or the demand? In this case, it's the demand, because these would be people who are buying the paint, the consumers. And if the trend is that they're painting more often, what are they demanding? More or less quantity? In this case, more. So we're going to shift demand to the right. D2. And then logically it follows that the price would go up because they're demanding more product. Okay, then we're going to go to the last one here. The truckers' union that transports paint from the factories to the retailers goes on strike. What does that have to do with paint? Oh, well, you need truckers to ship the product from the factory to the store shelves. So we're going to classify that as the suppliers are having problems getting the paint onto the shelves to the consumers. So it's the supply problem, supply side. So which way, which way does it shift? We're shifting, the quantity goes down because they're having trouble getting quantity. So supply shifts to the left, which would follow logically that the price would go up as a result. Okay. Now we're going to flip this over, and I'm challenging you to do the other side. And you're going to start off doing the same thing. S1, D1, and just get your equilibrium price established at the beginning. And then you're going to be shifting either the supply or the demand lines based on these scenarios for the market for cigarettes. Make sure that's on there. Okay. I'll give you a hint here on the first couple, and I'm going to talk through which side it is. Is it the demand or the supply? A cure for lung cancer is found. A cure for lung cancer is found. So, people are being cured of lung cancer, therefore there's less fear in smoking. And so in this case, it's going to be the demand. The demand is shifting. So for A, it's demand. And B, I'm going to talk through this one, and then I'm going to let you guys finish the rest of them yourself. The price for cigars increases. So if the price of cigars increases, we're going to count a cigar as what we would call a substitute item, meaning